What's up guys, and welcome to the channel. My name's Micah, and today we're gonna do an oil change on our 2024 Kawasaki ZX-6R. So we're gonna go through this whole process, start to finish. I'm gonna go through all the tools that you will need to do this yourself. We'll go over the oil types that Kawasaki says are fine to use in this motorcycle, as well as the oil viscosities and weights that are okay. We'll go over the filters, torque specs. It's just gonna be everything you need to know. And I would always encourage you guys to do all the maintenance on your own motorcycle. No one is gonna look after, care for, and check things over as well as you, the owner, would. So without further ado, let's rip into it. So the first thing that we're gonna wanna do is drain the oil out of our motorcycle. So if you're on the left side of your motorcycle, you will be able to see that drain bolt. You can kind of see it through the fairing here. I'll put my finger on it down there. It's that one there. And then you can kind of access it from the bottom there. So it's gonna be a 17 millimeter. It almost looks like it might be easier to turn a ratchet on that from the right side of the bike. So I'm gonna have you set up on the left side so you can see, and then I'll break that loose from the right side. The torque spec on that drain bolt is gonna be 21 foot-pounds. So it's nothing that should be on there very tight. All right, and then I've got our oil pan here close by. So that's just kind of a standard oil pan from Walmart, but it clearly has enough clearance to slide right under there. So you're not gonna need your motorcycle on any sort of stands or anything like that, but we will just put our ratchet on there and just bust that loose. There we go. And that is loose enough that we can spin it by hand. So at this point, I'm gonna put on some rubber gloves just to keep my hands a little bit cleaner. We're ready. All right, start to loosen this a little bit until I start to see a drip. Now you're gonna have a silver little washer on this drain bolt as well. So you'll kind of slide that forward and make sure that you take that out with the drain bolt. Try not to drop these in your oil pan. So we'll just turn those with our oil pan right there and ready. Whoa. And we've got our washer and our drain bolt. We didn't even drop it. So, and it'll just take a second for that to drain here. You know, it helps to just warm up your motorcycle a little bit before you drain that oil. It just makes it thinner, that it will drain a little bit faster. And I had warmed up our bike, but it is just a cold, dreary day today. It's about 37 degrees. It's kind of just raining on and off. It's windy, so it's a horrible day to ride. So I figured we might as well change the oil. Now on your drain bolt here, you'll kind of want to look at that washer. It's always good to have an extra one of these on hand. So kind of wipe the oil off of that. You always want to inspect this and make sure that that looks good to go. You know, if it's not, if it's jeopardized in any way, you'll want to replace this every time you do an oil change. But this is our initial oil change on this motorcycle. It has exactly 600 miles, so our washer looks brand freaking new, so I'm just gonna be throwing this one back on there. So, and maybe our next oil change here, we'll be switching that washer out. All right, so the oil is about all drained out from our bike here. So as far as the oil filter, it's also gonna be on the left side of the bike here. It's very easy to access. I'll kind of give you a closer look here at that. So there's gonna be our oil filter. You can see that there's a little plastic, little catch or a little guard here down below it. So I'm wondering how much oil is gonna come out of there when we spin our filter off. You know, I have a little funnel that I could kind of put under there to catch that oil to funnel it back into the pan here. But I'm just curious how much oil is gonna come out of there since this is our first oil change on this bike. Now to spin this filter off, the torque spec is gonna be 13 foot-pounds, so it's nothing that's on there very tight. So to get this started, you could use like an oil filter socket. You know, it kind of fits around all those flat sides of that filter. It goes on your ratchet. It's so easy to access. I'm just gonna kind of use a standard oil filter wrench and slip in here from the side. Usually you can give it kind of a quarter turn and those filters just come free. That is not on there with 13 foot-pounds. Should be loose enough I can get it by hand. Yeah, that is definitely gonna leak oil down and around everything there. I don't know if you can see that. Oil all over everything. I don't know if a funnel or anything would fit in there well. You know, you could curve a piece of paper in there to kind of funnel that out and away. I think our filter is off and free. Ta-da! Yeah, so I think for future reference, next time I change that oil, I'll just have like a piece of paper, cardboard or something, and kind of just bend that around there, and you know, kind of funnel that out a little bit here, so you can see that it's going to start to run down that piece of paper here. So my plastic funnel here just wasn't quite the right shape to get under there, but you can see that those drops are going to slowly run down this crease of paper here. So that would be helpful the next time we change it. I'll definitely do that. Now, if you're gonna always be using Kawasaki filters on your motorcycle, you know, I would invest in that oil filter wrench for sure. That's just gonna make life easy. But I got a K&N filter, and I think I'm just gonna use K&N filters on this. You know, I like K&N, they're a good brand. I've never had problems with them before. But on these K&N filters, you know, they have a little nut, kind of a bolt looking head welded into one side of it. So it's just too easy to put a socket on there. You know, it's a 17, just like the drain plug size. And so we can just put our ratchet straight on there to spin that filter off. It just works so easy. So I didn't get the filter wrench. If you're gonna use the Kawasaki filters, definitely get the wrench. You're probably gonna fight with that filter more than you need to. So we're just gonna take a little bit of our old oil here, and we're gonna put it on that rubber ring. You kind of want to prime those rings a little bit. It'll just help it make a really nice seal there. All right, and we'll slip a rag in here and kind of clean up that surface. You know, get any grease, gunk, dirt, anything that was on there off. So that all looks good. We've got a little oil on that new rubber ring. So we'll just fit this filter back in there. Start that. There it goes. And you can see that that head, that nut on that filter is just gonna be right there. Oh, it'll be so easy just to put a ratchet on that. Now, and we will just tighten down our filter to 13 foot-pounds here, even though the factory filter felt like that was at like 30 pounds, not 13. But we'll put this at 13 here. Now, I'm not using a torque wrench. You can kind of just feel it if you've done this a few times. You know, if you're unsure, definitely get a torque wrench. That's it right there. Perfect. Well, and now we gotta kind of clean up around here. Gosh, there's oil everywhere. Well, so now I'm gonna shimmy under the bike and put our drain plug back in, so that will be tightened to 21 foot-pounds of torque, like I said. So we're gonna snug that baby up, and then we can go about putting some fresh oil back in our bike. All right, so now we are back to the right side of our motorcycle. Since we have our filter tightened, we have our drain plug back in, so our oil filler cap is gonna be right here. And then you have a little view window down here that will show your oil level. So we'll kind of use that as we're filling our bike back up with oil. But as far as the oil, let's talk about that for a second. So I have our Kawasaki owner's manual. So these are not my words, these are Kawasaki's. So Kawasaki says that you can use conventional, semi-synthetic, or full synthetic oil in this motorcycle. Now, it seems like everybody has a preference on what kind of oil they like, so I'm not gonna tell you what oil to use in your bike. But so it lists some Kawasaki oils that you can use, and then it says, or other 4-stroke oils with API SG, SH, SJ, SL, or SM with JSO MA, MA1, or MA2 rating. So you get a pretty broad spectrum of oils that you can use in this bike. You know, it says that just the generic viscosity rating is gonna be 10W40. But then on the next page, it kind of shows you a little graph here and then some temperatures. So the 10W40 is kind of the most generic. It seems like from about 104 degrees Fahrenheit down to about 14 degrees Fahrenheit is going to be the temperature zone that that oil does well in. Here in Nebraska, those are primarily our temperatures, you know, that we would be riding 14 degrees to 104. So we're gonna be putting 1040 in our bike, but say you lived in Phoenix or something, some very hot climate to where it's warmer all the time and gets up to, you know, 115 or higher during the summer, you might want to use a 10W50 or a 20W50 weight oil, according to Kawasaki's graph. And like we said, that oil could be conventional, semi-synthetic, or full synthetic, and you just want to make sure it has the ratings here that Kawasaki says are fine. So the oil that I got, you know, it seems like everybody, you know, you might put Kawasaki oil in your Kawasaki. That makes sense, right? I mean, we did get Kawasaki oil here. So this is just gonna be their 10W40. This is conventional oil, but you know, there's the people out there who love like the Mobil 1 full synthetic 4-stroke, you know, 4T racing oil and stuff. Well, according to Kawasaki, that's totally fine too. So if you like Kawasaki, if you like Mobil 1, if you like Lucas products, you know, whatever's out there that you typically use, Kawasaki says you're fine to use it. So Kawasaki says with a filter change, we are gonna wanna put 3.3 quarts in our motorcycle, or 3.1 liters. So I just picked up a gallon, so obviously 4 quarts of just our Kawasaki engine oil. This stuff was actually really cheap. I got it off Amazon here, so it was like $30, I think, for this whole gallon, so that's not a bad price. I also got our filter off Amazon too, so in the description I'll have links to this exact oil and then the filter here that we got for our bike. You know, I think the filter was about $15, so 15 bucks plus our 30 for oil, you know, we're at $45 for an oil change. So this is our initial oil change. We're doing it 600 miles. The next oil change that we'll do, according to the owner's manual, is at 7,600 miles. So 7,000 miles later, and Kawasaki says after that, it's every 7,600 miles is the oil change interval. Now that's a pretty gracious oil change interval. I mean, you can ride your bike quite a bit before you have to think about getting an oil change. Now there's a lot of people out there who are gonna change their oil before that 7,000, that 7,600 mile increment. And by all means, change your oil whenever you want to, nothing is stopping you. But that is nice to see such a high mileage oil change interval. You know, and I would change your oil based off that interval or 1 year's time. So, you know, 7,000 miles, 7,600 miles, or 1 year, whatever you get to first. It's always a good practice to kind of change your oil every year. So, you know, say you only put 3,000 miles on your bike, you know, in one season, I would change your oil next spring before you start riding again. Some of the properties and the additives in that oil can start to break down over time. All right, and then on our jug here, you know, we do have these lines of 3 quarts, 2 quarts, 1 quart. So I'm just gonna pour oil into our bike till I'm down to the 1 quart here. You know, I should need 0.3 more quarts than that. But I'm just gonna go to there. You know, we're gonna look at our view window here and kind of see where our oil level is before we put in that last little bit. So we will take our oil filler cap off here. This is gonna have a little rubber ring on it too that you're gonna wanna look at. Make sure that rubber ring isn't jeopardized. Sometimes it's always a good idea to have an extra one of those lying around. That looks perfect. Obviously our bike only has 600 miles. It's fairly new still. All right, pop our little funnel down in there and let's start filling her up with oil. All right, so we're down to our quart mark on our gallon of oil that you can see down there. So at this point, now I'm gonna look in that little view window. So on the right side of your bike, well, and I'll put a little light on it here so you can see. So looking at that window, you'll see those 2 lines. So the bottom one, you wanna fill your oil up to. The top one is the max fill line. So you wanna have your oil level between there. So I always try and have my oil, you know, closer to the top line than the bottom line. So now what I'm gonna do is just tip our motorcycle up with one hand, and I'm gonna look through that window and we should be able to kind of see our oil level. Well, and I'll try and let you look at it with me here. So with one hand, you know, my front wheel's straight, just gonna hold the front brake and then we kind of tip our bike up straight here. So you'll wanna have your bike just perfectly straight until it kind of just feels weightless, and then we'll look in there at that window so we can see that our oil level, we can barely see it towards the bottom there. So if I hold my bike perfectly weightless, we're about at that bottom fill line. So we are just gonna add a little bit more oil to our bike here. We're gonna get it closer to that top fill line. Then we're gonna put our cap on. We're gonna start our motorcycle. We're gonna let it run for a few minutes. Then we'll let it sit and cool off, kind of let that oil drip back down, and then we'll check our oil level again. Well, and I guess as that's running for a bit, I can put some of my tools away. So we let our bike warm up for a little bit and kind of pump some fresh oil back into that new filter that we put on. So now we'll just wait a few minutes for that oil to settle back down in the engine, and then we'll tip our bike back up straight. We'll take a peek at that view window down here and see if we need to add a little bit more oil to get it to the level that we want. So we let our bike rest for a few minutes, so now we're gonna check that oil view window here. I'll let you take a look with me and we'll see where our oil level is at. So you can see our oil level there. It's between the two lines, but it's a little bit closer to the bottom line. So I'm probably just gonna add a smidge more oil in there. We'll get it a little bit closer to the top line. You know, that makes sense. It filled up that oil filter. Obviously that's kind of sits at the top of the engine there. So that got filled up, our oil level dropped just a little bit. So we'll add, you know, a couple points of a quart, and then we should be good to go. All right, oil level is perfect, and like clockwork, it took exactly 3.3 quarts. Makes sense that it would. Well, and so now I'll just mention a couple tips and tricks, things that I'm gonna do the next time I change the oil on this, and things I would definitely do if I were you changing the oil on this bike for the first time. Well, and whenever you're wrenching on Team Green, it makes sense to look for the green can. Grab yourself a Heineken, one of Amsterdam's finest products. You know, it's funny, we always rag on European motorcycles, and here we are drinking a European beer. And what I will say to that is, at least they did something right. Anyways, so what would I do differently next time? When you're taking the oil filter off, I would definitely put that piece of cardboard or double up a piece of paper right under that oil filter ramp, just to bring that oil kind of away from the bike. You know, not that it's a huge deal, but there's just a bunch of nooks and crannies there that oil will drain and kind of get down. You know, there's no drips under our motorcycle now because I was trying to get in there and wipe everything out, but you know, you'll have to spend some time cleaning your bike or spray it off afterwards, and you can avoid that whole hassle by just putting some paper or cardboard under that ramp. Second thing I would do is, regardless of if you're putting a K&N oil filter on your bike, you know, that has that little nut, that bolt head there, or if you're doing a Kawasaki filter, you know, I really kind of fought that filter to get it off the first time. Of course, the filter that we put on, we torqued it down to 13 foot-pounds. You know, it's got that little nut on the end that we can put a ratchet on. It's never gonna be a problem to get that K&N filter off, but we kind of struggled initially with the Kawasaki one. So even if you are going to a K&N oil filter, you might think about getting that oil filter wrench for your factory Kawasaki filter. Now, if you get the Kawasaki brand oil filter wrench, I think it's like $25, but what you can do is go to like AutoZone or Advanced Auto Parts, O'Reilly's, some sort of store like that, and you can get an oil filter wrench, just kind of a generic one. This is actually to a car, but it looks very similar to what you'll need for the factory filter on this. But your ratchet can just go in the end. You can put an extension on that so you have plenty of room to work, and then those flat sides kind of just go around your factory filter, and it'll just spin it off so easy. It's not like we were gonna reuse the factory oil filter or anything like that, so it didn't matter. You know, I kind of bent it in a little bit so I could get a good hold on it. But like I said, I feel like that thing was on there at least 30 foot-pounds of torque. I mean, it was snug. So if you can find one of those oil filter wrenches at your local auto parts store that will fit, you know, for $8, I would just do that. Avoid the headache. It'll just make life super easy. You know, there is quite a variety looking at the owner's manual of oils that you can put in this motorcycle. I mean, mean, all the different weights, you know, it says the temperature ranges that those oils are good at. You know, whether it's conventional, semi-synthetic, full synthetic, Kawasaki says they're all fine as long as they have the correct ratings, you know, for your motorcycle on them. So you wouldn't necessarily have to get the Kawasaki brand oil. Obviously we did, only because it was cheaper than Lucas or Mobil 1 from my local parts stores. So in the description, like I said, I'll have our exact filter that we put on. I will have that gallon of oil that we got, the Kawasaki conventional 1040. So feel free to get that if you want. It'll be our affiliate link, so we get a small kickback as well. But yeah, that's really it. I mean, everything is very straightforward. Everything is easy to get to on this motorcycle, and that's what I liked, you know, the location of the filter. While it can be messy if you don't do things right, it's so easy to get to. You know, we didn't have to take any fairings off of this bike to access the drain plug, to access the oil filter, get either of those off. So that's really cool. It is just minimal work to do an oil change on this bike yourself. So I definitely would encourage you to do that. Like I said, nobody is gonna look after and take the amount of care that you will for your motorcycle. You're the owner. You care about your bike more than Joe Schmo down at the local shop. You'll save money while at the same time you'll have confidence when riding your bike, knowing that everything was done correctly on it. It will help you feel independent, empowered, and knowledgeable. And always take time to check over the rest of your bike. You know, check your coolant level, check the tension on your chain, you know, look at your brakes, different things like that. It only takes 30 seconds and your life is on the line. I would say that's enough of a reason. So that's probably gonna be all that I have for you guys today. So like the video if this helped you out, subscribe if you guys want to see more, and until next time, have a wonderful night, guys.